10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Welcome back. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, hello, ladies.
Hello.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming in. I'll do a quick, brief introduction because technically something didn't go the way it was supposed to go, but that's the way things happen here. Welcome to the latest and greatest here, ladies. Let me pull you out for just a second here. Welcome to the latest and greatest Greg Walters show. I think this is our 4th or 5th or 6th. It could be. This is the weekend before Halloween of 2022. Right now, what's going on is the supply chain is still jacked up. People are fighting going back to the office. Some rates are around 50%. Some say they're going to be higher or lower, but 50% occupancy rate is what people are talking about. Volumes are down between anywhere between 60% and 13%, depending on who you talk to. We don't know what's going on. The elections are coming up for the midterms. We'll see how that happens. Inflation is high. The recession is over the horizon. And if Philadelphia wins, that means we're going to go into a recession because for the last 100 years, whenever Philadelphia won the World Series, we were in a recession. So look forward to that. Today's guest, I am been looking forward to this forever, for a long time. Quick introduction for the ladies, Amy and Paticia. They are from the Imaging Channel and Workflow. They have been and the subject today is the industry media. They've been in the media since the very beginning, since when we used to get our information when it was printed in a magazine. We moved digital and still kept the magazine going. Today's topics will be great. I want to talk about a bunch of stuff that has to do with influence of the media and all that stuff in our industry. We're going to try and stick real close to the hour time today. So I'm going to bring these ladies in right away and we'll get the conversation started as soon as we go. Hello, Amy. How are you? And hello, Paticia.
Howdy.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
So, I don't know if you heard the introduction, but so I'm going to, because of time, first of all, thank you very much for coming in. And I guess I should say, I've known these ladies forever. I've been writing for you guys for at least 2 or 3 months now. And it's been a joy, an absolute joy. Actually, it has been. So, but I want to get to it. So let's real quickly define what the industry media is, right? So you guys have been in it for a while, from print to digital. And I'll give you my take, and then maybe you go from there. So the way I look at it as an end user, as a consumer of, right, I would go to we'll call them the vehicles out there that give us information on what's going on in the industry, right? That's been part and parcel, table stakes of any type of information that comes out of the industry, about the industry, for the industry, right? And it could be anything from Sharp announcing 23 new devices to Xerox being bought out or Ricoh buying Icon, all the industry news that happens, as well as the other tidbits that come out weekly. My question is, we've had media here for a long time. Where have you seen, and I don't mean technically, what have been the changes? And we'll start with you, Paticia, and then move in. What have been the changes you've seen in the influence of our industry media on the industry? And is it an influence of, is it a reflection? Is it a projection? What do you think about those issues when it comes to our media?
I actually think the influence has lessened quite a bit. I think that there is a dispersal of the avenues of information, as we've seen in every arena of our lives here in at least the US, if not the world, that bloggers can have their own basically media company, right? So they can gain their own following. It decentralizes media, and the more medium that you can access information from, that's going to disperse it even further, right? So I think the influence of, a couple key media influencers is pretty much gone, and now it's a little bit of a free-for-all in there, and the quality of the information has lessened because of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and we'll touch on that. Amy, what do you think? What's your
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's a very changed, and it's not just our industry.
No.
Media
Right.
has changed overall, but I will argue that the influence has a lot to do with the person being influenced. It's what you choose to consume as well. And for, maybe some traditionalists like myself, we still consider, traditional news organizations as a source of news. I, for one, I'll go on Twitter, I'll read, little BuzzFeed blogs and,
Mhm.
watch a random video or so. But where I choose to get my influence from is going to continue to be mainstream media, trusted, reliable, original sources. So I think it's largely individual.
Right. So then, well, that's a heck of a big subject beyond our, well, not beyond, inclusive of, but beyond. But so I hear, and this is the way I look at it, so I hear media influence, right? And then I think something happened, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not in the industry, when something changed between news and opinion, and then news, opinion, and entertainment. Somehow all three of them got jumbled. And because like I've heard people say there's no more Walter Cronkite. All right, I get it. Right. But there was a narrative back then as well. It wasn't quite as promoted and produced. You had 3 channels. So still, Walter Cronkite got on the news for a half hour every night, roughly 18 minutes of real on-camera time dedicated to content, taking the commercials out, and then whatever stories were selected to talk about. And I'm talking about even today, right? And you've got to be careful between what's news, between what's entertainment, and between what's opinion. And that asks a lot of an audience, I think, to do. Now, I think they should. I think it is up to us as to what we consume and then what we think of that. So that means I don't like censorship in general. I mean, we're really going into it now already. I don't like censorship in general because I want to make my own decisions, even if they're wrong, quote unquote, whatever that is, right? If I messed up. I took someone else's information, acted on that information, ended up that information was incorrect. Well, that's not on the information. That's on me because I decided to only look at one.
Whatever. I mean, if someone's purposely putting out false information, it's also on them.
I agree with that.
I mean,
right.
A couple different people to create that kind of disaster, right?
Right. So you've always got to be conscious of that too. I mean, you can go all the way back to World War II. I mean, there was some conscious propagandizing, and it still goes on. But so ultimately, yes, if someone puts out false information and that is truly bad, and I decide to act upon that information in a way that supports that false information, that's on me. Of course, I was dumb enough or uninformed enough to make judgment calls, and I didn't realize that it was being which in the olden days, we'll get off the subject in a second, which in the olden days was kind of easier. I think it was more black and white. Now we're demanding even more from.
I don't think anything's changed on the shade of gray that lives in the margins. Okay. No, I think it's never been black and white. It's just a lot easier in retrospect to make things, pigeonhole them in a black and white category. Things are as complex then as they are now. Yeah. And people have to just go through it. I'll tell you what though, Greg, we are grateful every time someone reads anything because our medium that we prefer and have lived in, and it's very old school, but it's the written word. Right. So it requires people to read, and we're just happy when people read. So whether or not it's the highest quality editorial or, it's just the people are reading is a great thing. I love the fact that we can get on here and have a conversation. You can see our faces. Lots of information is being distributed in this conversation, but ultimately, for better or worse, we selected the medium of the written word as our outlet, so we're kind of stuck with that. And it's good when people read, period. So that's a good thing. It's just sometimes it's frustrating for us because even just the difference between people sometimes don't even discern the difference between a press release and an actual article that took 3 days to write and 15 hours of research, and they're like, oh, this article I read, which was a press release. And and for us it's frustrating because we just spent I don't know 48 actual hours creating something, and they're like, oh, the press release told me this, and they think it's an article. So but that's on us to educate the reader even more.
We're doing that right now. Let's educate.
Some people don't care, and you know what? It's okay. The bigger point is that people are still reading.
Well,
so
I kind of assume that, but yeah, good point. I agree.
I wouldn't assume it anymore.
Yeah, I know. All right, so bring that back to our little niche, our industry, right? So press releases versus articles, aggregated content versus created content, right? How do you think we are in the industry on the media side? Where are we at in terms of educating versus advertising for? Has that changed? Has that not changed? Is it 50-50? I'll start with you, Amy. What do you think that, is there a difference now, or what are your feelings on that?
I think in the sense of the traditional media, and it hasn't really changed. I mean, for us, I can say that we've always had a focus on journalistic content or created informative content, but we also share news as well. I think where the difference is now is with the internet, social media. And again, as Patricia was saying, now that it's so easy for anybody to have a blog, anybody to go out there and share information, aggregation becomes a lot more common. And so that's where you see more of a mix of that, because you've seen more people kind of getting into the game and sharing that distributed information. The amount of content creators, I might argue, has stayed pretty much the same. In fact, it's maybe even lessened, depending on how broad you're giving a definition of the industry to. But the amount of, or the number of sources out there.
Interesting. Patricia?
So I don't have a problem with aggregation at all. I think it's great because it helps also disseminate our content further, right? So everybody can benefit from aggregation. So I don't think there's a problem with that per se. It's just when people aren't careful about understanding the source of the content, and then it gets a little, mucky in there. So I just think the onus is on the reader to understand where this is coming from and have some kind of faith in the fact that there might be some valid information in there. And I mean, that might be a lot to ask because there are so many different avenues that content is coming in from. So it's a bit of a problem, but do you really want a truth seeker out there just slapping stickers? Oh, this is true, this is false. We don't want that. So in general, I like aggregation. I like the fact that we can get our information through all these different mediums. I think more information is better. I mean, in the end, I hope that information is our savior. From bad stuff. I think it's all good in general. It's just, there is, I think the bigger problem is really the way the algorithms skew towards controversy. So I really think that that's where people manipulate that and try to gain readership, and they're flamethrowers, and that is exciting, and people want to go fly to that flame, right? And so they get a ton more attention than some of the, a lot of writers are very introverted, so they're not out there pumping their own stuff, right? So some of the best stuff is the unnoticed stuff, and unless there's somebody to lift that up and mention how great that is and that people should take a look at it, it's never going to be seen, right? So some of the best thinkers and some of the industry's best thinkers aren't, well distributed. So aggregation can be a really powerful force.
I like that. Okay, that's because my thought when it comes to aggregation is the Drudge Report, right? That was what, to me, the first big digital aggregator. Everyone knew who Matt Drudge was, but the guy didn't create any content, right? When he did, because he did, it wasn't as good as the stuff he was aggregating. But as a platform and as a business model, it took off. It's still around, right? I think over time, this is an opinion of mine, that his, for some reason, I don't know what happened, but it looks like he's aggregating different types in a different direction. But I haven't looked at him for a while. So, but okay, back to our industry and the aggregation. I agree with that. I liked it, and it is because there's so many different sources, right? I mean, especially now. So I'm looking at, my Google alerts. I'm sure you guys have the same thing. All the alerts, all the press releases that come in, and you're in the industry, in the media side, so you're on everybody's list. I'm just a consumer of the content, and it's huge. It's voluminous. It is, and you're right. I hadn't thought of it per se, but the really good stuff, truly good stuff, generated content that is insightful, has an opinion, but it's based on some sort of fact that is easily obtainable and observable. It's hard to find because of all that other stuff is on top of it. And I'll admit I was, and probably still are, part of all that other stuff that gets that attention per se. Now I like true content. That's really where I'm at. So I really prefer true content over aggregation, but I understand where it's like drinking out of
but who's willing to pay for true content? That's the other problem, right? So because everything's free and there's so much out there, you don't need to pay for anything unless you really want something really,
well, now you swerved into another
knowledge that's going to share with you, and people won't pay for it, right? So there is a bit. That's why in the old days they used to support the arts because writing wasn't art, right? So painting, writing, singing, dancing, but that's
But that's the beauty of our industry, though. I will say that the good content, you can get a Greg Walters blog on the Imaging Channel for free.
Yes. So thank you very much. So at first that sounds interesting. So it is for free to read, right? But that's because advertisers, and correct me if I'm wrong, the guys who are paying, quote unquote, for that to be free to them are looking to get eyeballs on that. So, right? I mean, that's the whole model that was kind of turned upside down, but wasn't that, I don't know, in newspapers, right? Back in the, it cost 25 cents or 15 cents or a nickel to get a whole newspaper. And remember when Wall Street Journal was, I don't know what it was, but you couldn't read it in one day because it was so huge, and it was 75 cents. But their model, I guess newspaper models back in the day, where they were making revenue out of how many editions they got out, and that was their main revenue stream, correct? I don't know. Where the advertisers were part of that, but not as big. Do you guys know the answer to that question? Was revenue more from subscriptions than advertising, or was it 50-50?
So, I mean, listen, in the B2B trade publications are different because those are typically free circulation, right? But if we go back to, for instance, Recharger magazine, which was a big magazine full of supplies advertisers, they also charged for a subscription, which was a very unusual B2B trade publication model. So revenue came from advertising and subscriptions. I don't know if it was 50-50. Newspapers are different because that's a B2C model. C means lots of people, right? So it can vary on which percentage is more of the either subscription or advertising, but you can have both and have a viable publication, but you also can choose different avenues. I mean, we are on an advertiser model. That is a very traditional B2B publication model. Some toe an editorial line, and I'll let Amy talk about that a little bit more if she wants to, but some of them are just chock-a-block of advertorial, and some are not. Some actually have really high quality editorial in the publication that has plenty of opinion and lots of experience and knowledge and data packed into it. And some are a mix of both, right? So again, it ultimately it leads to the reader and how they want to consume, and also how they want to discern what they value. And it's a free market. So.
Yeah. Amy, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think for the most part, I think advertising is the primary revenue generator for most. If you take something like Consumer Reports, Their model is very specific. They don't accept advertising, so they are subscriber driven for reasons. But for the most part, I think in a normal media, B2B or B2C, you're going to have a largely advertiser driven model. Subscriptions are not going to be
So along those lines, and maybe a little future think, do you see that changing again, or what do you see changing in our industry on the media side? And I guess it even gets specific to our budget's going to dry up, advertising budget's going to dry up, increase, and I guess I don't know. I'm asking, does the economy impact that much? Consolidation in the industry, which we're still waiting for a bunch of shoes to drop, in my opinion. What's going on? In two questions, then, do you see that model sustaining beyond next month? I guess we're only thinking 30 days in advance, and I guess where do you see it from this point forward? Because what's interesting in our and this is a little side, in our industry, considering all the traditional media outlets right now, right? If they're still around, they've moved from print to digital, right? You guys have been through that transformation, right? That must have been huge in terms of business and all that. Was that the biggest and going to be the last big shift, or is there another type of shift that's over the horizon? Could it be in creativity? Is it going to be different advertising budgets? They want to throw money at different areas. Then I'll even throw this in, the old pay to play formula from the OEM specifically to us, if you can talk about that. But yeah, initially, what do you guys see, or do you see a change impacting the media from our industry based on what all the other changes that are going on? And anything rise up?
Amy, do you want to hit that first? You want me to?
I mean, I'll just say very quickly,
Sure.
I think there is a more digital focus. Print won't go away.
No, right.
I've tried to make it sometimes, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that really like print. So in the short term, I don't see anything changing significantly. I see us expanding our creative outlets a little bit to try to reach more people. The more avenues that exist, the more we're going to try to use them to reach different people, the different preferences. And it's already expanded a little bit. I mean, we've gone to a little bit video and even, kind of social media conversations a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But how much it's going to change, I don't know. Patricia, I'll let you forecast.
Well, I think things are evolving all the time. To be honest with you, there was no major struggle for us with the digital at all. I feel like we're using a lot of mediums already, even if it's on the consumption side to create. So we may be, despite being kind of old school, kind of already on the front line of usage. So things don't feel as weird to us as it might be for an office or a SMB somewhere, right?
That's
because we're already in there consuming media information from all different angles. So I think there's just going to be more and more opportunity. Honestly, yes, the industry is on a very slow decline and has been for ages. We started off, Amy and I have started off working for a imaging supplies publication. We talked about printer cartridges all day long. And we have a publication that deals in AI and workflow solutions and digital transformation. So I feel like if we're talking, let's say we're containing our conversation to the office, there's a lot going on in the office. So there's a lot of avenues and consumption and creativity. And as long as the office remains an interesting, vibrant, crazy place, whether you're showing up in person or hologramming in, I feel like there's going to be plenty to write about, talk about. There's going to be plenty of companies involved. They may not be all of the same ones, although some of the same ones. Listen, Elon Musk is now a media mogul. I mean, that guy, rocket ship, electric car. I don't know. It changes every day. So whatever companies we have in there now, there's going to be other ones coming in that want to play, right? So
Right.
I think it's just an evolving landscape. And as long as you want to continue to be in the game, you just kind of evolve with it, whether you like it or not.
Let me turn the subject because you swerved into it, right? You guys start out with talking cartridges, or I start out with selling 25 page per minute copiers, both A3 and A4. Boom, 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 boom. Document management systems. So this, scanning, archive, Liberty, Cold, all that stuff. Today, it's all mashed together. Now I call it the super convergence, right? And now with COVID throwing everyone back to the kitchen, to the dens, we've now interlaced, dinners, truly, kids events, after school events, the dentist. Now it's truly integrated to the max. How has that? I think you've already answered it. So that opens up a whole other universe of subjects and people to talk about, as opposed to being very vertical and very narrow or focused in one area. I see that on one side. Talk about that from the industry side, from the business side, and then even swerve into the work from home, the COVID, the how everything is mushing together. Why I'm talking about this, because I just had the discussion over the last 3 weeks, is trying to define the 2-word phrase office technology. Right. Okay. How do you define office nowadays? And technology was always gray area to try and nail down. But now office is totally different. And so when I'm, if I have to write an article on office technology, that doesn't mean I'm not writing about, how the IoT is in your blender, or your microwave is calling back, headquarters because it needs a service call or some sort. Because we can talk about that specifically, because that's what our industry started as. How do you guys observe that? And then maybe Amy, to start there, does that impact the creative process, or how does that impact? And then in general, I want to know, because Hemingway is still viable as a style. Is there anything? Do we get away from the traditionalists? Is it that will someday the way we communicate be like Shakespearean English, where people don't even know what the hell you're saying anymore? I mean, on that path, or what? Because everything's mushing together. I know it's a huge question. Forgive me, but
there's a lot to unpack there. I'm not really sure where to start.
Not even a Bloody Mary.
We should have started this differently.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go back to the definition of office technology, because
perfect. Thank you.
The last part I understood of your question. But so to me, when we're talking about office technology, and it is very broad, and it's gotten broader because both of our publications now are about office technology. Now, I will argue that your blender is not part of the office.
Okay.
Even if you work from home, even if you work out of your kitchen, that's not office. Office probably encompasses workforce maybe, and those are the things that you're doing to do a professional job, regardless of the location you're doing it, and the tools and technologies you're using to do it. So around me, I can look around right now and I can tell you I have an iPad, I have a microphone, I have a MacBook, I have AirPods, I have a phone. These are all pieces of office technology, down to the power supply and the monitor, things like that. These are all office technologies, and conveniently enough, they are technologies that dealers in the channel are able to sell now, which is probably another great way to define that. Diversification obviously is the key, and that's what a lot of people are looking at, is not just the software and the solutions, but the ancillary parts of the hardware as well. And I think that's where the office is now. So the office is everywhere, it's still a printer cartridge, and it's also the AI component of the software that you're using to create billing. It's broad, but it's still definable, I think.
Okay.
Did I answer part of your question?
Yes, you did. Very well. Yeah. No, I think you did. Well, how about the creative process? Like, Yeah,
My
like
creative process, the writing creative process, or the
writing creative process, and to kind of want to segue into the collaborative part of the creative process, right? And more specifically, you hear the argument that we've got to be face to face in an office to be more collaborative and more creative. I probably know where you're going to go with this, but what do you make of that statement, and do you foresee what changes do you foresee over the horizon when it comes to collaboration and creativity? And if you go from writing to, I don't know, sculpture to architecting a new building, right?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to cuss on this broadcast, but I will say that the idea that you need to be face to face is bull crap. You don't, and some people do. Look, everybody has a different process. I'm an introvert. I'm a writer. I've been working remotely for 15 years at this point. And look at us right now. We're sitting and we're having a conversation with each other, also across live broadcasts, but this is the kind of thing that people do now. And it was before the pandemic, although the pandemic definitely forced it into more common for everybody. But we were doing this kind of thing. I was having conversations with my colleagues in Las Vegas long before anybody ever heard of COVID. And it hasn't stifled my creative process at all, because my creative process is a lot of input from what I have around me, the people I choose to talk to. But I'm also not one of those people that needs to go to a coffee shop to write. I don't want people around me. I don't know why people do that. So that's one person's perspective on what the creative process is and how we work. Now, there are people that need human input to function, that they crave that the feedback, and they need it face to face. And that's why that's why everybody's been so excited to get back to live events. We went 2 years without having any of them. And even people hater, I'm happy to get in front of people. I don't hate you. I really don't.
I know what you're talking about. Patricia.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So I do think I want to frame something when you were talking about the coffee machine or the blender in the office. And one of the things that it brings at least me home to center, and we have a conversation about it a lot in the editorial team when we're creating content, is that the first thing you have to focus on is who is the target reader for this piece of content. So if the target reader is the dealer that sells blenders into offices, wherever those offices are, it could be your home, your SMB, whatever it is, then that becomes a part of the conversation, right? So if the target is just people in their home hanging out mixing Bloody Marys, that's going to be a completely different focus. That's not focused on office technology. You're using it for an entertainment purpose, right? So the first thought in our heads is who is the targeted reader for this, because you really want to focus that target around what they would probably find the most interesting and useful. So that's your center in your home. Home to the piece, right? So that's one way to kind of bring it back to where you think it should be, because it is hard. It gets complicated. The office is a very broad topic at this point. Office technology is a very broad topic at this point. But if you look at who your target reader is, you're probably going to be able to center it a little bit better.
Right. So something just came to mind here along that topic and what we talked about earlier. So you've got definition of an audience, the target market, who you want to create this content for that people will read. I understand that. So where does philosophically, and I hate using this word, but the visionaries who are going to create content, is there a way to create content to lead versus reflect? And then does that fit in our industry? Or how do you feel about that? And specifically to our industry, and then maybe more in general, because it does go back to what we talked about earlier about the narratives and things like that. But I don't know how, will people pay for that to listen? I guess some people will, to read about a visionary evolution in the future that might include chipped blenders. Is that, do we get into the realm of fiction, I guess, versus real? Does that make sense? You know where I'm going with that?
I think we've been doing it for a while.
Okay.
So we have a publication called Workflow Magazine,
Okay.
and that's at least 10 years old. Is it 10, Amy?
More than 10, I think.
Yeah. And so the creation of a publication takes at least another 9 months because it's like child birth.
It's been 10 years.
Yeah. So workflow was not a phrase that was used in our industry at all, and we created it specifically to be aspirational, a look towards the future, to bring in these themes. It later, it started with workflow, then it came, then it evolved to digital transformation. You'll see AI topics in there. You'll see all kinds of really further out topics for our core audience, and it was created intentionally to show different pathways to what the future could look like. So there's absolutely the ability to do that, and it's luckily we've been very fortunate to be very well funded. So that's well funded. Everything's well funded. So it's
by well funded, you mean well funded on a commercial business plan?
Yeah, they do great. So
we're not
I
being
don't know.
grants.
I think there's support for that kind of content.
Okay, good. Wow. I asked that question, and I didn't even I forgot about workflow. You're absolutely right. So, yeah, answered my question. Which, by the way, I'll plug it. I read a lot of different things, right? I'm sure you all do too. But when I go from the industry, like technology, computers, blah 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 blah, all that techie stuff, and pick up on the content in workflow is excellent, and it comes from good sources too. And I don't get the big head, but they're not salesy articles, right? I have to figure out who that author works for.
Correct.
On my own, right? I got to go, who the hell? And it isn't like
you can, and that's also part of the point.
Right. And so, but I haven't read anything over there that on any of the stuff, really. I mean, I go to other places, and you can certainly tell that it's been washed by HP's press.
They definitely have a big team. So
anyway, that's a compliment there. But also, I think that's a good statement. Thank you for bringing that up, that there is a market for that. And so let's just talk about workflow. I think, you had a vision that was at least, I didn't know it was freaking 10 years. Geez, old pizzeria. So it was over the horizon, at least for our industry at the time. I know that for a fact. I mean, we were still with clip cords and pencils, and workflow was something that happened to water, I guess, back then.
Right.
But so that's encouraging. I don't even know where I was going with that point. But so let's go future then. Let's talk about the where do you see, and industry wise? I mean, I know you get this question. I don't even want to answer it. So do you think there's going to be a lot of consolidation in the industry? Do you think that someday, print is going to be not completely dead, but because I look back on my history with the computers, right? There was Gateway, there was Leading Edge, Acer. There were at least a dozen different computer manufacturers. IBM and Compaq were the big hitters. Now they're gone. Dell's around, right, or whatever. Do you think that's going to happen with us? Because do we still sell linear copiers? Is linear still around? Because remember that thing, the brand was gone, but it was still getting on label. It never died.
There's some linear machines around. Yeah.
See, so what do you got? I mean, do you think we're going to see a consolidation like we did in the computer industry?
I think we're seeing consolidation, and have been for a while now. It's consolidating, absolutely. But if you think about the office technology reseller these days, some of them started with typewriters. So, I mean, they've been through a couple of evolutions already. And I like to call the office technology resellers, I call them micro transformers, because they transform every day. They're making micro transformations, and that keeps them in the game. So they're able to evolve with their customers. And I think that's a real testament to the staying power of this sector. So while there will be consolidation, there's also evolution, and the micro transformers, they're kind of like superheroes. I feel like it allows them to keep step with where their clients are and a little ahead of it, right? Because that's always the important part. That's why there's workflow. You need to be aware of what's coming. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, no one knows what's going to happen next, but they've got a great track record. And so I feel like the industry, because while people continue to work, now when we all stop working because everything's done by, I don't know, aliens, or I don't know. I don't. But
aliens. All right.
As long as people have to work, there's going to be a need for Sherpas and resellers and all kinds of stuff, right?
Perfect. Yes. Okay. And I agree 100%. You know, I've quote unquote been hard on the industry, just like everyone else. Not as well. That's changed a lot. But you're right. I have to do a little bit of studying. I think you're right about our niche it may be unique to the niche, because I remember, right, that the computers that went away, there was a reason they went away. You know, be like the typewriter went away, but the dealer moved to a copier dealership. Copier dealers went away. They went away, right? They didn't evolve into something else. If they did, it was very, very small. Regardless, so I have a question for Amy, totally off the wall.
Oh, good.
Yes, the future.
There is one.
Thank you. Is the future more Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars was never the future.
I know, but that's not what I asked.
Who's Star Trek? Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek? Today's Star Trek?
No. Yes, I'm sorry. Should have made that assumption. Yes, the real Gene's Star Trek.
The real.
I would love to say that the future is a utopia where we have moved beyond needing cash and money, and where there's no differences between races and there's no strife. You know what the future is? The Orville.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I can understand that, I guess. I'll have to dig. So the future is Orville. I will okay, excellent. Patricia.
Yes.
The future. Is the future I know. Is the future Meta? Oh shit. Is it Meta or Google?
Oh God.
Oof.
I was like, are we talking Meta as a word, or you're talking about Facebook? Yeah.
Either way, I mean, she went to Orville. Amy went to Orville, so it's a wide open question.
I think the future is going to be complex and increasingly complex, and we're going to need tools to help us function in that complex environment. And there will be a lot of companies that will bring technology to assist. So while Meta and Google will be a part of that, there will be others, many of others. So the future is upon us. So we do have a lot of, especially in Workflow Magazine, talking about different tools that people can use in the office to help automate, to deal with that complexity, right? So there's just going to be more and more of that, and it's going to become more and more user friendly. I mean, lately it's a lot of low code, no code, where the citizen programmer can create these strings of automation in the office to accomplish tasks, and then you can go do the more complicated stuff that humans need to do with more nuance and conversation, perhaps even, Amy. People still talk to each other. But it's just going to continue. We can't stop the march, right? We have to learn how to deal with it. And part of the way to deal with that is with tools and with creative companies I feel like in some ways things are more democratized now. I mean, the problem is if you look, Facebook started out small, but look at it now. Google started out small. They started in dorm rooms and with a couple guys, and hopefully there will be more women involved in this later iteration. But small, there's a lot of air in the room for small upstarts to become big, powerful companies. The problem is then they grow into these behemoths that are hard to control and difficult to regulate. So, but I think there's plenty of opportunity in there, and there's really not a better place for it than the United States. So,
sure,
I think we got a lot of game in us.
Right, and absolutely. One little more subject, and then we'll close out. So, and it just hit me when you compared Facebook and Google, right? They end up being what they thought they were fighting against when they first got into
well,
it.
at least what Google thought they were fighting against.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned
to fight against anything.
Yeah, Google. I was in California a long time ago when Google bought up, I don't know, 100 or 200 scanners from Panasonic, the Google office in Irvine. I was like, what are you guys doing? And I was fortunate at the time. I didn't even think about it. I was fortunate enough to be there. So why are you getting all these scanners and the high ends? He goes, the answer they gave me was, we want to scan everything. Oh, okay, everything in the office. No,
everything.
The internet has to come from somewhere.
And when was that? 2002 or 3 or 4 or 5, in that range. And okay, well, good luck with that. Here you go. Here's your 400. And these Panasonics these are the big old ones that just could, they're garbage disposals. Like, what are you going to crank through there? Everything? Yeah, we're going to scan everything. And that statement has come back to not haunt me, but it's come back to, he's like, wow, they weren't kidding. No. And then their other statement was, what, first, do no harm or something like that, or do good or whatever it was. And
do no harm.
Yeah. I don't think I've heard that come from them in a while. So anyway,
things have changed.
Yeah, they did.
Things have
okay.
changed.
Everything changes, and so I think that the way I want to close this out, and it's gonna be like a cliffhanger, because you kind of swerved into it there, Miss Paticia. Women,
love and danger. Women
in our industry, and I mean, and I'm going to open this up because I'm going to have another session. I want to get women from our industry, right? And I want to get the stories. But if you guys want to leave it with just a 120-letter tweet of some sort, how do you see women either not participating, but influencing, participating, playing in the world as technology advances? And I mean everything from, we don't have time, but corporate, chiefs and bosses participating in, does technology equalize the genders to a certain? It does, but how do you feel about that? And then if I leave it at this, because I want to invite a bunch of women back together, and I want to have these conversations about what the heck is going on. Has it gotten better? Is it worse? That whole kind of thing. And I lost my train of thought. Tell me, how do you feel technology helps you in, forgive me for saying this, in a male-dominated world? Amy.
Technology makes no difference. My gender and technology have nothing to do with each other. I do what I do because I am a person with the skill set and talents to do the things that I do. My gender has nothing to do with it. And if you want to get to a future that I want to live in, I want to live in the future where we don't have to talk about women in this or women in that. And you can expand it to any other race or identification of any sort.
Paticia.
I have a slightly different opinion. I mean, I love Amy's opinion. I think it's awesome. But I do think that technology helps level the playing field. I think it helps level the playing field for everyone that might be a little different. So we're talking, race, just even differences in accessibility from having impaired eyesight, or there's tons of ways where technology can be a great equalizer. And in a way, I do think on some levels, technology also helps women get on an equal footing, because you don't know who programs something. You don't know if it's a male or a female a lot of times. Now, Amy wrote this terrific article, I believe it was in Workflow magazine, that there was a professor from a university, I believe in New York, who talked about the algorithms and the creators of the algorithms and the coders. And there were all these biases that were worked into the code and the way they were created, so that when people would say, I don't know, they'd ask for some generic term like the office, and it would come up with a computer engineer, and then they'd ask for something else, and it would be a woman in a home cooking, some
yeah, I remember that article
with a woman or something like that.
What'd you say, Amy? What was it?
The word kitchen would automatically come up with the picture of a woman.
So there's all kinds of biases that get worked into the background of a lot of the stuff that we're not even aware of, and that does influence people, right? So the more women creating the code, the better off it's going to be, honestly. But technology does help equalize when it's done properly and when it's leveraged properly. And so I consider it just a revolutionary benefit to women. And I just hope that that in the education that the kids are getting, that's really stressed, so that people know that they have different ways and avenues to access and gain wealth and business acumen. Absolutely, because they can create businesses based off this technology and raise families and pay for it. There's so many great things about technology that is, I think, under leveraged. And so I think it really does help minorities, people with disabilities, gender differences, all kinds of stuff. So I'm just a big fan in general. I just, it as long as it's used properly and is a force for good and not evil. So.
Right. Oh, wow. Well, I'm really glad I asked that question. And those are beautiful answers. I mean, you went from left field to right field, but they're in the same. It's perfect. And that's what it's supposed to be, right? It's a whole spectrum.
Yeah.
Cool.
The messy world that we live in.
I love it. I can't think of anything better to end on. That was really good. Okay, cool. Except for this, you've got Workflow, the magazine, the imaging channel. There we go. Oh, look at that.
Ooh.
All right. So 2 platforms coming up. See, you guys are hitting the shows, I'm guessing, throughout the end of the year. And then
we're in our last sprint. Correct.
Right.
We have a lot of webinars coming up. That should be fun.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. So I would encourage anyone who's seeing this either today or down the road is to hit up the sites, go to, just Google them. You'll get there. Check it out. But Amy, Patricia, thank you very, very, very much. And I'm dead serious. I haven't gotten a date yet, but I really want to invite 4 or 5 ladies of industry. And again, I'm with you. I don't want to
ladies of industry. Do that. Do that. Just put it in big letters, pink, hot pink, ladies of the industry, because
I don't know what
and wear oven mitts.
I'll put the apron on and do that.
I'll come play with oven mitts. I've got some good ones.
Oh man. So yeah, you see where my challenge will be. I don't want it.
That'll be entertaining.
All right, ladies, I'm going to end it out. I'm going to click leave the session, but thank you very, very much. Again, thank you for everything you do for the industry. Thank you for continuing my relationship with you guys. Looking forward to Over the Horizon. I can't believe it's been 10 years for Workflow. I'm going to go away stunned and numb on that. And
thanks for having us on.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
This is great.
The next time will be a 3 p.m. Friday afternoon.
Thank you.
I'm going to get my office blender working.
Please do, and we'll connect it, and we'll all log in, and we'll put in drink recipes. Yes. Excellent. The last one I did on a Friday afternoon lasted 2 hours and 59 minutes. So, and there was
Friday afternoon.
It was a Friday afternoon. Yeah. All right, ladies. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Talk to you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.